gold in U.S. Treasury bond terms is up 200%. Bitcoin in U.S. Treasury bond terms is up 2,000%. So those, you say tipping point. Well, those are like canaries, that just keeled over dead. Like, oh my goodness, this is really a serious problem. There's a lot of paper gold, what I would call, ETF and, gold futures commitments that don't represent actual ounces. In a currency collapse or a worldwide currency event, I believe China would try and reset with gold, which is why I think the U.S. should really go forward with a strategic Bitcoin reserve, because I think it'd be a way to leapfrog them and we'd be better off. The third Fed mandate is financial stability. And they say they don't want inflation. They say they're going to be disciplined. The Dodd-Frank law basically said, thou shalt not bail out banks anymore after 2008. And yet along comes Silicon Valley and it fails and they bailed it out. So they broke the law. Because at the end of the day, when push comes to shove, they have two choices: print the damn money to keep everything alive, everything solvent, and everything going, or let it collapse. The only tool the Federal Reserve and all the central banks have when financial conditions get messy is they print money to solve it. And that's the nature and the problem. The whole broken system is based on the fact that they can print money.
Hello, welcome. Thank you for joining for another episode of You're the Voice. I'm Fiat. I'm so happy to be here with you. And I have the most wonderful guest today, dear Larry Lepard. Hey, Larry, how are you?
I'm great, thank you, Efrat. I always really enjoy talking to you, so I've been looking forward to this for a while.
Good. I've been looking forward to talking to you as well. And I'm sorry that how we have to start it with some bad news, but it's important, I think, to share with people who are watching, just for them to be careful, but also because we really want you to be reinstated back to Twitter /X, whatever you call it. And you've been deplatformed. What happened?
Well, I've been calling Elon without success. So just real quickly, there are several very sophisticated scams that are going around where they claim to be somebody in the media or somebody, at a position that would be kind of bait for me. I mean, in my case, I've just released a book, as you know. And so somebody from Bloomberg reached out, and I checked them out, and they were a real person on Bloomberg, and the email looked like it came from Bloomberg. It wasn't one of those funky email addresses. And so I clicked on the Calendly invite, and the next thing I knew, I had an interview set up on Calendly, and then I did that on Zoom. And I don't know exactly how they accessed my Twitter account. It's pretty. The technology on the other side is getting very good. They're sophisticated, right? And so I have 2FA on Twitter, so in theory, I should have been protected. But I think when they can somehow get into your computer through a malware link, and then they can grab your cookies, and that allows them to sign on to Twitter in your name. And so the next thing I knew, I got an email that says your 2FA has been disabled on Twitter, and then I quickly got on and tried to fix it, and my password had been changed, and my email had been changed, all that stuff. So they grabbed my Twitter account, and they started hawking, shilling shitcoins. And then all my users attacked them, saying that they knew it wasn't me. And then they came back and started using the N-word over and over again. And so Twitter deplatformed me because I hit all their community standards, right? So, So here's the message. Be extremely careful about who you open your Google Calendar to, allow access to your Google Calendar, open a Calendly invite from, because if their Calendly settings are wrong, I think they can get through. And even Zoom, they may have done it on Zoom, where we were talking on Zoom and they asked me some information, and I made the mistake of sharing a page. And apparently if your Zoom settings aren't correct, they can use that to get into your computer. So I don't know which of those three was the access point, but I do know that, these people were fake and they're pernicious. I mean, they're all over, and other people have gotten caught too in this, and they're pretty good. And I was on a Zoom call with these people, and this wasn't, there was no strange foreign language. I mean, these people sounded like they were Americans. They actually sounded like they were legitimate Bloomberg reporters. So, or they could have been. I mean, I should have figured it out, but I didn't. So, they're sophisticated about all this, and it's deeply frustrating because, as you know, since Elon went full Doge on Twitter, he fired all the customer support, and so I've been saying,
you're talking to bots and AI.
I don't know. Talking to bots. It says refer to this page, go back to here. The most recent one I got was, we're sorry, we can't verify you. Open a new account. Well, and my account's 8 years old, and I've got 200,000 followers, and I've got a gazillion DMs that I need to respond to. And so opening a new account, I mean, that is my last ditch effort, but I really don't want to have to go there.
No. And I hope that, everyone that's watching this video now, this clip, please share this so that we can reinstate Larry. This is
nice.
Super important. There's a campaign going on right now trying to reinstate
I appreciate
you.
that. I really appreciate all the support.
Yeah. We're all going to try and share this.
Look, in general, I don't have that much to say, and all I do is rail on the Fed. But, if ever there was a bad time for me to get hacked, it's kind of now because I've got my new book is out, right, which you can see here. And, I mean, when you launch a book, you're trying to make some noise and talk about it and so on and so forth. And, it's been selling well and all that, but certainly it would be helpful if I could have my
Plus, you are one of the people on Twitter that is giving so much value to your followers. You're sharing all the time a lot of super valuable information for investors, for people who have interest in gold, in Bitcoin, in economy. That we need you there. It's just
I really
unacceptable.
Appreciate that. You're very kind. I appreciate that. But I just, I'd like to get it back. I should also say I moved to Nostr. I always had a Nostr account. I wasn't very active. I've gotten very active. Nostr's great. Nostr's the future. Everybody who's on Twitter should get a Nostr account. It's great backup. And I think over time, we'll all migrate over there and we'll leave these big centralized things behind.
Yep.
But in the meantime, 200,000 followers is no joke. And I'd like to be able to access that. So.
For sure. And we'll do what we can to help. So
Thank you.
I just want to add to what you said that I had the same thing happen to me, but not via email, via DM. I was contacted by two different reporters from TechCrunch. You had Bloomberg, I had TechCrunch, and they said, we want to interview you. And this is the Calendly link. Yes. And it looked a bit suspicious because why would you want to interview me now? Like, it's been a while since I've been on the radar of TechCrunch and all these tech publications. I used to be on there, but not anymore. So I Googled the name of the guy that DM'd me, and I got to this LinkedIn post by someone who is warning about that specific scam account, that they got also a DM from the same person and it doesn't exist. That person doesn't exist. And apparently they said exactly the same method as you said, but they didn't say anything about Zoom. They said just the Calendly. It was enough for them to set it up. And that opened like a pathway for them to get access to your Twitter in some way.
I mean, I'm not a techie or a software person. I don't know about cybersecurity, but
that's happening. So I
these people have gotten very sophisticated.
Yeah, I could have fallen for it as well. But people, please watch out and report.
Links that are suspicious, do not click on them. I mean,
exactly.
You can go back
and anyone that you don't know that is just approaching you have to be so careful with validating who they are.
Yeah, I think that's right, and that's my new stance. I just assume everything is malicious, and I mean, I get tons of phone calls.
No, I mean, all of us could fall for it. This is so.
It's truly annoying, but it is what it is. It's the world we live in today, and it's going to get worse.
Exactly. Sadly. It's going to get even worse with AI. This is going to be so simple for hackers.
Well, that's the thing. The AI will help people to fake, you and your voice, all that stuff. I mean, Preston actually says to me whenever I talk to him, he's like, we talk about something. He says, "What do we have in common?" And I say, "Aviation." He says, "Okay, I know it's you." So he's already suitably paranoid, and it's not a bad idea, right?
For sure. 100%.
You're the Voice is brought to you by Trezor, the original Bitcoin hardware wallet company pioneering the development of self-custody for crypto assets since 2013, empowering individuals with an open source device, enabling beginners and experts to easily and securely hold their coins. I find my Trezor super easy to use and recommend it to my friends and family. Enjoy my 5% discount on Trezor products by clicking the link in the show notes and using the code FLAT.
So hold on, Larry, I'm taking a step back for my audience that may not know you. I want to give you a quick intro about you, and then we'll dive into our questions, okay?
Sure, great.
Okay.
You want me to just give it out, or you want to do it? Or
I'm going to do it for you.
Okay, absolutely.
I mean, you can then lead what I didn't say.
Job than I would.
But Lawrence Larry Lepard is the founder and managing partner of Equity Management Associates, focusing on monetary debasement insurance through investment in gold, silver, and Bitcoin. He's the author of the new book, The Big Print. Can you put it up, please? Thank you.
Yeah.
Referring to the inevitable acceleration of money printing by central banks to sustain debt levels. And we're going to talk all about the book today.
That's exactly
and
right.
Please go watch episode 24 of You're the Voice with Larry, which was one of my and my audience's favorite episodes last year.
That was a lot of fun. That was the first time I met you in Madeira. That was a riot.
It was a great episode.
As the Spears would say, I went very much off piste on that. I was, some of that stuff was not for general consumption. The language, etc. My wife has really been all over me to clean up my act, and I'm trying hard to do that.
No, you're great. Just keep being you. That's what's important.
Well, let's see.
All right. So, did I miss anything important in your intro?
That's it, really. I guess. I don't know what your first question is, but I'd like to explain why I wrote this book.
I started with, why did you name it The Big Print?
Okay, I'll go there too, but let me start with kind of the why I wrote the book.
Please.
So I was sitting around last year and I was watching Team Red and Team Blue debate, and I don't really like either of them that much. I like one more than the other, but they both have flaws. And frankly, most politicians all have flaws. And, to go into that business, you got to have something wrong with you. But, and they were, it was like, I felt like they were looking at a house on fire and they were arguing about the color of the drapes. You know what I mean? And so, and to me, the house on fire is the monetary system is broken, the money is failing, Lynn coined it so great with the term, with the title of her book, Broken Money, which, by the way, I borrowed from heavily in the book with her approval. And, so the money is broken. And I thought to myself, gosh, it's so obvious to me what the problem is. And it feels to me like most of the world's not even aware of the problem. Obviously, Bitcoiners are. And then I thought, well, is there room for another book in this space? Because Safeteen's book is the standard. It's fabulous. It's a great book. I've given it out to many people. But frankly, a lot of people who don't have a real strong interest in this, they tend to bog down because it's a little textbooky. And I think the same is true with Lynn's book to an extent. It's a fabulous book. They're both better than mine. They're so much more scholarly. And so I thought, maybe somebody could write a book here that kind of tells it more as a story and makes it more interesting and tries to really break it down and make it simple so that anybody, anywhere in the world, blue collar, chief executive, whatever level you're at and whatever level of knowledge you have about the monetary system, you kind of read this book and go, oh my goodness, now I understand how they're screwing me. And now I understand what I got to do to protect myself. And so that's the goal of the book. And to me, success of the book will not be being liked by Bitcoiners, because I'm pretty sure Bitcoiners are going to like it. Success will be, does the average person in the street who knows nothing about this read it and go, oh my goodness, this really opened my eyes to how bad it is. And oh my goodness, gosh, this is really hopeful and positive, this whole Bitcoin movement that really can solve the problem. So that's the general thesis of the book. Let me go to the next stage, answer your question. The reason I called it The Big Print, actually, that goes full credit to my book agent, a woman named Maura Phelan, and she's really fabulous, and ex-Random House. And I wrote the book, and she started reading it, and she came up with two very good conclusions. She said, this story, about HBS, this has got to be right in the front of the book. I mean, this is an amazing story. You stood up and spoke truth to power. And so I shifted that around, and that became the opening scene of the book. The second thing is I use the term, and my partner David Foley and I've been using the term The Big Print for a long time, because really the only tool the Federal Reserve and all the central banks have when financial conditions get messy is they print money to solve it. And that's the nature and the problem. The whole broken system is based on the fact that they can print money. And we've already had two big prints. We had one in 2008. We had another one in 2020. And the way the system is constructed, they have to print money to keep it going. And my belief is, the one in 2008 was a certain size. The one in 2020 was even bigger, and there's an even bigger one coming. And so throughout the book, I kept referring to the big print, the big print. And Maura said, this really ought to be the title of the book, and it plays nicely off The Big Short, which of course is Michael Lewis's brilliant book on the 2008 crisis. So that's how the title became The Big Print.
Got it. And in your eyes, the audience of the book, or not just Bitcoiners or gold investors, or
not at all,
any person can read that book. I've been reading, I think I got to like 60 pages now. definitely anyone can read that.
Absolutely. And I tested it on people who didn't know much about the monetary system. My wife is an executive. She's in PR and advertising, a lot of things. She knows a lot about business, but she doesn't know anything about the monetary system. And I said, I want you to be able to make sure you understand this. And she read it. And she had all kinds of useful and helpful suggestions. Like, I started off talking about the Federal Reserve. She goes, what's the Federal Reserve? I was kind of like, all right, I need a footnote, because, you go out and you talk to a person who's blue collar, they may not know what the Federal Reserve is, but that's the core of the problem, right? And so yes, I've tried to write it, but I've tried to make it sophisticated enough so that even people who know all these things will also go, oh, there's an insight I didn't realize, that there's a historical fact that I wasn't aware of. And also, I think a benefit I bring to it, Efrat, is I'm kind of on the older spectrum of a lot of Bitcoiners. And so I've been through this. I've been in the financial markets since the early 80s. And so I've seen how it got done. I've seen where all the bones are buried. I remember all the prior events. And, I've talked to people, and I was talking to one Bitcoiner. I said, yeah, well, do you remember when LTCM went down in 1998? And the guy looked at me and said, I wasn't born. And I was kind of like, oh, yeah, that's an interesting point.
Yeah, you have the proportion, like the reference from history, because you were there. You experienced a lot of these things.
Yeah.
You have 3 generations that you're speaking about in the book, right?
Yeah, I tell the story of my family. They managed to get us 3 times. But like I said in the book, we've been lucky. We all made it through, But the Federal Reserve, in my opinion, and the fact that the monetary system is broken and mismanaged, it's caused a lot of pain for a lot of people. Just an enormous amount. And when you get guys like, at the last Jackson Hole conference, Jerome Powell, made a joke in front of the whole crowd and said, well, it looks like the good ship Transitory has sailed. Remember how he used to say this inflation is transitory?
Yep.
And so here he is at the Jackson Hole Monetary Conference. He's joking about it, right? Right?
These people don't even care. They don't even see the suffering of the.
That's exactly right. He makes a joke about something where, 40% of the money supply got printed in a 2-year time window. And, if you were, say, a blue collar worker and you'd worked your entire life to save, I don't know, $100,000 or whatever the number is, maybe even more, maybe $1 million, all that labor, all those years of you working hard and saving, and they take 40% away from you with one event, in 1 2-year period, boom, 40% of your savings is gone. You can't, unless you're fortunate enough to invest in things that protect you from that, like gold or Bitcoin or to some degree stocks that protected people. So, yeah.
And the worst thing is that most people don't. Most people don't associate it.
Well, that's the thing. That's the thing. I think, everybody in Bitcoin makes this statement. I know you've made it many times on your pod that everyone senses something's wrong. Everyone senses that we're in this fourth turning that we've talked about. By the way, another great book that everyone should read. I've got in the back of my book, I have a list of must-read books, and The Fourth Turning is one of them. And we're in a fourth turning where the monetary issues are really, in my view, the key issue, and they're likely to spin out of control. And I talk about that in the book. When you get later into it, you'll see policy alternatives and monetary resets, and all the things, all the different paths we could take, because we're kind of trapped in a system that, based on this flawed Keynesian logic of, you've got to print money to keep the system going. We're trapped in that. And until we return to sound money, these problems will keep coming up again and again.
So in your eyes, what's a probable timeline for another big print?
Yeah, that's a great question. Nobody really knows.
I know it's hard to tell.
Yeah, it's very hard to tell. So no, don't bet on this. But
yeah,
it feels to me like we're getting pretty close. I think in the next couple of years, something's going to happen that is going to break. Yellen was able to hide it by taking a lot of the debt and making it into short-term treasury bills. The reverse repo facility was then used to buy those bills and to hide it. The deficits are extremely large and getting larger. Now, there is a positive development on the other side, which is Doge. And that's going to help slow it down, possibly, but not nearly to the degree that Elon is pushing it. he says we can eliminate $2 trillion of deficits, quickly. He's just wrong. I mean, if you look at the math, it just doesn't work. I mean, 80% of the expenditures are in Social Security, Medicare, interest, and defense. And most of those are kind of untouchable. Now, maybe not. Maybe eventually they will become touchable. But, to balance the budget today, we would have to cut those items 50%. Can you imagine the political hell that would ensue if all those things got cut in half? I mean, it's just, and by the way, you can't really cut the interest rate in half without creating more inflation. So we're in kind of what I call a debt death doom loop, where deficits get larger. Therefore, you sell more debt. You sell more debt into a fixed size debt market. Interest rates go higher. Interest rates go higher means the U.S. federal government interest expense goes higher. It's now running at between $1.3 and $1.4 trillion a year. We spend more on interest on the debt than we do on defense. And it's approaching what we spend on Social Security. I've said it in the past. It's kind of like we're kind of like the United States government. They're different because they can print the money, but they're kind of like the family that takes out a new credit card to make the minimum payments on the old credit cards and just keeps doing it. And, so far as the world's reserve currency, the largest country, the largest military, we've been able to get away with it for a lot of years. But if you look at historical comparables, and there's a great Hirschman Capital chart in the book that shows that typically when you get to about 130% of debt to GDP, we're at 125 right now, problems ensue. And in 11 out of 11 cases that he studied, you either have some kind of a collapse or you have massive inflation. And so sadly, that kind of stuff could be in our future. Now, I don't like to be, some say, well, you're being a doom purveyor. I'm not a doom purveyor. The world's a good place. Things are going to get a lot better, but we've got to transition from a broken monetary system to a sound money system if we want to have that get a lot better thing take place. That's kind of my view.
I'm with you. You speak about inflation in page 22. I quote you. You say, "You have always lived in an inflationary world unless you were born before me, 1957. It feels normal, but it is not."
That's
and
right.
Most people think it is. And then you have this chart showing what happens around like 1971.
Yeah, that's one of my favorite charts in the book. I mean,
right.
From 1800 till 1971, the country, had periods of inflation. You'll note they tended to be around wars, the 1812, the Civil War, World War I, World War II, Korea, Vietnam. But then in 71, when we went off the gold standard, I call it in the book, I call it a galactically stupid act. It was just incredibly dumb. They could have basically revalued gold, but Nixon didn't want to do that because it would have been inflationary. And so he just said, you know what, we're going to default. All you foreign guys who thought you had dollars backed by gold, you don't. And that started a path toward where we are today, which is a road that we were kicking the can down. And the can has gotten really big and really heavy.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And, could it go on another 10 or 20 years? I suppose, but I'm not really sure. I don't see how. And to the degree that it does, it almost has to be an inflationary 10 to 20 years. I mean, there's no way, that without, another chart in the book I like a lot is the chart that shows the growth. It used to be my Twitter my Twitter posted chart. It shows GDP. I don't know where it is. It's further back. You're gonna have a hard time finding it. But it shows debt has grown at 8% a year for 50 years, and GDP has grown at 4% a year for 40 years. It's probably under the Stein's Law chapter. And so, what this means, the GDP is what's used to pay for the debt. So if you grow the debt you're accumulating, this is like a family who's taking on debt faster than their income goes up. Eventually, once again, you can't meet the minimum payments. You can't pay the debt off, and so. And by the way, Efrat, this is not something new or unusual outside of the reserve currency. So, other countries of the past 200 years, we have a lot of examples of other countries exhibiting this exact same behavior. And what happens is they have hyperinflation, their currency fails. I mean, Venezuela, Zimbabwe, Weimar Germany, Russia, China after World War II. I mean, there are many, many countries who've had instances of currency failure as a result of spending money they did not have and then printing the money to fill the hole.
Yep.
And of course, eventually what happens is when a quorum of the people realize they can never stop printing, well, that's the suddenly part. As you know, Bitcoiners often say, gradually and then suddenly. And so,
And
yeah, go ahead.
sorry, no, you finish.
Yeah, so and so my view is these other countries have done the same things that we're doing, and we know how it ended for them. Now we're slightly different because we're the biggest, and got the military, we're the reserve currency. But what makes us think that by behaving in the same fashion, we won't have the same outcome eventually? You know what I mean?
100%.
Yeah.
And so, is there a tipping point for a collapse in confidence in the fiat currency or in the system? Is there, in your perspective,
Yes,
you've been seeing that many times, is there like a specific time where people kind of wake up and go, okay, this is too much?
I think we're right on the cusp of it. Let me tell you why. There are two really great charts in the book that I love, which are the chart of the price of Bitcoin in bond terms. So bonds, treasury bonds, used to be the base level of collateral. They were the safest, most pristine collateral in the world. If you wanted to park your money somewhere where you knew you'd get it back and you'd earn a small return or some return, you put your money in a U.S. treasury bond. It was AAA rated, et cetera. That used to be the thing that you would do financially, okay? Yeah. We know that the U.S. government's behaved so irresponsibly that that's not working anymore. And if you look at, from 2020, when we kind of started this last big print, gold in U.S. Treasury bond terms is up 200%. Bitcoin in U.S. Treasury bond terms is up 2,000%. So those, you say tipping point. Well, those are like canaries, that just keeled over dead. Like, oh my goodness, this is really a serious problem. But you're right. And what I tend to do is I tend to look at the bond market as really being the tell. And we saw in September, we saw it in the UK gilt crisis, and we saw it in the fall of 2023 in the US, where the 10-year the US 10-year now is in the fours. It cannot go over 5, or else they've got a real problem. At least that's what historically we've seen. And so what will probably happen is if we see the bond market start to break and interest rates go up over 5 because people have lost confidence in the US government's ability, that will be a very important tell. But that's just the third tell. The first tells, gold right now is reaching record highs, 2,900 plus, right? And there are shortages, which is not, that's not conducive to what they're trying to tell us. And then Bitcoin we're not very far off the record high. It was a record high 106 or 7, but we're going to bounce around between 90 and 106. Who cares? It's a lot higher than it was a year ago. And it was the best, once again, it was the best performing financial asset last year. It was up like 126%. So those are, to me, the indicators. And, if we wake up some morning and gold is at 3,500, and Bitcoin is at 150, and the U.S. bond market is over 5 and going up quickly, well,
it's like all the sirens are off.
Then it'll be red lights flashing. We are in the theater. The fire alarm has gone off. There is a lot of smoke. Get the hell out. Those are the kinds of things I look at in determining. And when might this happen? You asked that earlier, and I want to address that a little bit. I kind of think this whole thing will happen by 2030. Now, you might say, gee, can it really last that long? Possibly. They're pretty good at can kicking. Take this failure of Silicon Valley Bank as an example. I thought that might be an event that would force it. And for a while it did. Yellen was talking about maybe guaranteeing all of the bank deposits in the United States, because if Silicon Valley Bank went down, they were afraid there might be a nationwide run. And, that's $17 trillion in bank deposits. The Fed balance sheet's only 7. So the Fed's going to print 17 trillion to guarantee all the banks. And so what you can see is that, the third Fed mandate, and I talk about this at length in the book, the third Fed mandate is financial stability. And they say they don't want inflation. They say they're going to be disciplined. The law, there was the Dodd-Frank law basically said, thou shalt not bail out banks anymore after 2008. And yet along comes Silicon Valley and it fails and they bailed it out. So they broke the law. Because at the end of the day, when push comes to shove, they have two choices: print the damn money to keep everything alive, everything solvent, and everything going, or let it collapse. And this is why Hank Paulson had to beg Nancy Pelosi to give him $700 billion for TARP. He said, if you don't give us this money, the ATMs will stop working. Those were his exact words. And so the fact, and by the way, I gave a big speech to some people down here. I'm in Naples, Florida right now, some older, and a lot of people, they regard Bernanke as a hero for saving the system. And that's not how I see him.
Yeah.
But that's the way the system is set up.
That's how you start the book, with that meeting, right? That everyone's
yeah. They all think he's great, right? But
how do you not see that what happened in 2008 was so devastating?
It was totally devastating for millions and millions of people. And it was incredibly unfair. I mean, bankers paid themselves $20 billion and they got to reload and do it again. Do you know what I mean? I mean,
that connection between the media and the institution, whether it's banks or the state, is there to keep them protected. Because if the media is not showing people the truth about what happened and really highlighting, or good journalists saying, listen, these guys are thieves and they've just been bailed out and received even received money for what they did, then people wouldn't know.
Well, and people don't know, because and this is the hopeful part of the book, as I talk about in the back. I mean, we're going to be saved by technology, my friend. I mean, you and I are speaking halfway around the world. We'll broadcast this out to thousands of people. They'll get this message. The listenership or the viewership of CNN and CNBC and all these media stooge organizations that shill the state propaganda. They're losing share. And meanwhile, Tucker Carlson can do a podcast, get 90 million people to watch it. You know what I mean? Or Joe Rogan, or Robert Breedlove, or whatever. I mean, we are creating our own alternative media, and we are slowly but surely dismantling these big sclerotic organizations. I mean, big food, big pharma, big defense, big media.
The truth cannot be stopped.
Right.
Because they will find a way.
Exactly. And people are just so tired of being lied to about everything. Mm-hmm. And so, and that's why this election went the way it did, and so forth. So, the technology is really, I mean, I wrote the book to try to make this stuff happen faster because I'm impatient. but honestly, even if I hadn't written the book, what I'm describing, I think will happen any way you look at it, because people aren't stupid. I mean, they may be, and they can be misled for a while. But when they found out they've been misled, they're mad and they try and figure out how to solve for it. And so my book, the goal of my book is designed to make people mad and then to show them how they can solve for it. And so, what would really, really make me happy is if this book kind of goes viral and we get, millions of people that realize that this is a very, very big and important issue. And that's the goal. That's why I wrote it.
I'm with you. I'm going to help you push this. This is super important.
I appreciate that. I mean,
it's super important. I already have a link to your book on my blog, because it's through Knut's store that people can buy there, and all my followers know that they can get a discount on Knut's store. So
fantastic!
Get a discount on
he's a great guy, and that's a great site. You can buy it for Sats there, which Amazon doesn't let you buy stuff for Sats, although a lot of people don't want to spend Sats, but you can spend them and replace them.
Yep. You can do that. All right. I've got a few more questions for you.
Sure. Where do you want to
go? Okay. So gold.
Yeah.
Gold has a long history as a store of value. And in the last few weeks, months, we've seen a lot of movements with gold, especially when it comes to central banks and states and what they're doing. Like, what's happening? And obviously the price of gold is going up. So me and all my friends who have gold were very happy, but we don't necessarily understand everything behind the scenes. And
full disclosure, neither do I. None of us know, but the facts that we do know are that there's a lot of demand coming from the COMEX to get gold bars shipped from the LBMA. A lot of the big central repositories of gold. And of course, but this is one of the problems with gold compared to Bitcoin. Bitcoin's distributed, and there is no central repository. Yeah, there is no central repository, and we can all see all the addresses, right? But in the gold world, the big central repositories are in Switzerland, London, and the COMEX in the United States. And we've seen just enormous increases in volume of gold being demanded in the United States for COMEX delivery from the LBMA. And then the LBMA came out with some lame excuses that, well, it's heavy and there are lorries blocking the roads. And so it's going to Did you see that? It was pretty funny.
Yeah, I did.
There's going to be a big delay in getting you your gold. I mean, normally we could have it to
Because
you.
you know it's a bit heavy. It takes time.
Yeah, right. And so, of course, that is one of the flaws of gold. I mean, I can send you $1 billion of Bitcoin in 10 minutes. But yeah, so there's been a lot of demand and there's a lot of tightness in the market. And we see spreads are higher everywhere. We see premiums in the Far East, et cetera, all of which suggests that somebody and many parties are suddenly deciding that they want to buy gold, that it's important to own gold. And, there are some who've even suggested it might be the United States government in terms of, just trying to think about a reset. There have been some who've suggested that it's just very wealthy individuals who are trying to protect their wealth. And there are lots of billionaires in the world. And, if they get worried about the underlying currency, they could say, I want some gold. And the other thing I would add is that those of us who've been in the gold trade for a long, long time, studied it very, very carefully, can say with a very high level of confidence that there's a lot of paper gold, what I would call, ETF and, gold futures commitments that don't represent actual ounces.
Right.
And so an ounce of gold is a physical thing. You can't replicate it. You can't print it. You have to mine it out of the ground.
Yes.
And we believe that there could be as many as 10 or 100 claims on every single one of the ounces that is above ground. And if that's the case, what you really have here is fractional reserve gold, like fractional reserve banking, and it becomes a game of musical chairs. And so if 3 out of the 10 people say, I know you owe me some gold via paper, I'll just send you the paper. Why don't you send me the ounce? Well, there won't be enough ounces to go around, so the music stops. Who's got a real physical ounce? Who's got a chair? And so that's why I don't trust the ETFs like GLD. There is one ETF I trust, is the Sprott Trust, PHYS. It's up in Canada. But if you're going to buy your gold through an ETF, that's the only one I trust. And that's why, just like with Bitcoin, we say, not your keys, not your coin. With gold, I say, if you don't hold it, it's not yours. If somebody's promised to give you gold, well, if the promisor is Lehman Brothers and they fail, you're not going to get your gold. And I think there's some of that out there. So it's an interesting development. It comes at a very interesting time, right? I mean, with gold at record highs and Bitcoin at record highs. I mean, all of these things indicate to me that we might be on the cusp of the quote unquote suddenly phase. We might be. I don't want to jump the gun. I don't know, but we could be.
Got it. Okay. Yeah. You often compare Bitcoin to gold. Do you believe Bitcoin will fully replace gold as a premier store of value, or will they coexist, especially now with all the movements that we're seeing?
Yeah. So, great question, and complicated, and it all depends on timeframes. I mean, longer term, absolutely. Bitcoin completely demonetizes gold, but that could be 30 years. Okay, that's a long time. I won't be here. So, they shorter term, I mean, you got to understand, 8 billion people know that gold is money. Several hundred million or more understand that Bitcoin is sounder money and better money, lower, better stock to flow, all that kind of stuff. Countries, if they're likely to reset, I mean, like China doesn't believe in Bitcoin. I think China's bet heavily on gold. We know China has more gold than they say they have. I think they're thinking they would back their currency in a currency collapse or a worldwide currency event. I believe China would try and reset with gold, which is why I think the U.S. should really go forward with a strategic Bitcoin reserve, because I think it'd be a way to leapfrog them and we'd be better off.
Yeah.
But let's talk about when gold will replace Bitcoin in terms of value. So, total gold market cap
the
today,
other way around, where Bitcoin will replace.
That's what I meant. I'm sorry. That's a Freudian slip, right? So Bitcoin is roughly $2 trillion of market cap today. Gold is, I don't know, it was 18. I guess I haven't run the numbers at 2,900. It's probably getting to be 19 or $20 trillion of value. So the total gold market is 20 trillion, although not all that's available. Some of it's in museums. A lot of it's around women's necks, although that could be melted down. But the point is that Bitcoin could go up 10x and it would only be the size of the gold market. So we could have $1 million Bitcoin per coin, and that'd be the same size as the gold market. I think that's going to happen. I mean, the power law projects it. A lot of things project it. So I think that's probably likely to happen within 5 years, maybe 7 years at the most. I mean, maybe less. And then after that, I think it just kind of it goes up 10x again. I mean, I'm kind of with Michael. I mean, it's going up forever, Laura. I mean, it's just, I mean, I mean, people look at me today and they say, well, gosh, Larry, you bought it for 10 and it's at 100. How do I pay 10x what you paid for it? And I give them two examples. I say, one, consider the financial system to be the Titanic, and these are lifeboats. And seats on a lifeboat. I paid $10,000 for my seat. It's $100,000 to you right now. Do you want it or not? Your choice. Yeah, you got to pay more, but it's your choice. I mean, the other way I say it is, if it continues to compound at the rate it has, it'll be $1 million in 5 years. It'll be $10 million in 15 years or 20 years. And so, if that happens and you bought it at 100, you're going to feel very good that you bought it at 100, and people are going to be looking at you and say, God, I got to pay 10 million for it. You got a whole coin for 100. Boy, that's different. I mean, in the same way that I look at Max Kaiser, I bought my first one for 400, and Max bought his for $1. And, and he was jealous of Trace Meyer, who bought his for 50 cents. So, it's all kind of a matter of, where you get
it's
in.
All relative.
It's all relative.
Course.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's the soundest form of money. It's a technological invention. It's the soundest form of money that's ever existed. And so therefore,
and mathematically, it's going to keep going up forever.
It's just going to keep going up forever. So, and that's, by the way, that's a really beautiful thing, because what it does is it changes around who wins the game. Right now, you win the game by playing around with money, by borrowing and speculating, by gambling, by doing all kinds of financial engineering. Okay. If we have an asset that goes up in value continuously, and all you have to do is hold it and sit on it, savers win the game. And that's what you need. You need people who save money, because savings is what leads to productive capacity increases. And I talk about that a lot in the book, and that's what's wrong with the Keynesian model.
So that's like, Larry, I want to stop you there, because let's pull on that thread. This is that's, I think, where real change can come in the world, where the mindset of people starts to change from consuming and running on that treadmill and being so obsessed with how you're going to feed your kids and and make sure that you can pay your mortgage, etc., and just think of things that are very short term, and you don't have any notion of saving and thinking about long term and future. And then something like Bitcoin comes in that allows you to think about the future and the long term. And people don't get that the scarcity of Bitcoin is what makes this possible.
Exactly.
And when a change like that happens, it's not just, you becoming rich. It's you changing the way you think about money, and you changing about how you think about your family and how you think about your future and your kids' future. So that's the opportunity for change, right?
Absolutely. And you can do long time preference things, I mean, so that, you can build. I mean, when is the best time to plant a tree? Today, yesterday, but the next second best time is today. And, good things take time, right? And so you can take the time to educate yourself. You can take the time to build high quality things versus doing shitty things that, on a quick basis to try and just make the maximum amount of cash that you can make. And more importantly, I think it's really good, as I notice that I'm getting closer to retirement age, is you can act, and I see among my peers, what I see that's sad is people have worked their whole life, maybe their house is paid off, maybe they have savings. They're in the 60s or 70s, and the savings are substantial by anyone who would look at them and say, you're rich, although, modestly so. But they're saying to themselves, I can't stop working because I don't know how long it's going to last. I might live 30 years and I'll outrun my money. And so suddenly that whole dynamic gets flipped on its head. I mean, since I got into Bitcoin, since I now own Bitcoin, since I understand Bitcoin and what it is, I now feel like I can't outrun my money. You know what I mean? That I will always, every year, I will grow richer just for having saved in Bitcoin terms. And the feeling of relief that you get when you enter that world, it's a really huge, it's a big burden off your mind, because running on the treadmill, the other side, playing the fiat games, that's a hard life. I mean, it really is.
Absolutely. Well, one of my followers has actually gave a question.
Yeah, happy to do it.
Chris, he wrote a question, so I would love for you to answer it. I mean, I can answer it too, but I want you to try and talk to that. He says, and I guess from his question he's a beginner that is interested in Bitcoin. He says, as the deeply uncomfortable push by governments and the new desire for cryptocurrency in the US is happening, how well do you consider the survival of Bitcoin?
It's a great question, and there's a couple questions kind of buried in there. There's the one about the whole crypto thing and David Sachs and the strategic crypto reserve, and you and I are maximalists, and I hope most people listening to this become maximalists, and I hope I know a lot of other people like to gamble in crypto or participate in crypto, and I consider that all to be really fiat-ish sort of behavior. As we all know, the Bitcoin innovation is the immutable proof of work that secures the ledger. And really, there aren't any other cryptos of any kind of scale that have that. And so they all, leave people vulnerable to being rugged. And I hope that the U.S. crypto reserve really is only Bitcoin, although I'm sure the crypto side of the world, XRP, all those guys, Brad, et cetera, are trying to push to get their stuff in there, Ethereum, et cetera. But the answer to the gentleman's question is I feel very strongly that Bitcoin will survive, that it's not killable, that it's now fully decentralized and too large to be undone. And so that it will become the premier form of money. I think my kids will pay for things in Satoshis.
I think so too. I think the only thing they can do is regulate the hell out of it.
Well, they can slow it down. There's no doubt. And I've talked about this. And so let me just give you a bad scenario. I mean,
please.
Team Red won, and I'm glad they did. Versus Team Blue, from a crypto point of view, and but that could change. In 4 years if things don't get better and Team Red does dumb stuff, Team Blue will win, and we know Team Blue doesn't like crypto, and so what they would do is, they would try to maybe tax it. They'd say, "Hey, you guys are getting unfairly rich on the back of our currency collapsing. We don't like that. We're putting 90% tax on gold, 90% tax on Bitcoin." I mean, they could even do what Roosevelt did. He seized the gold in the 1930s. They could try and seize the Bitcoin. I mean, it wouldn't be hard for them to call up BlackRock and Fidelity and say, send all that ETF Bitcoin to us and give those
if it's not in self-custody,
yeah, give those people cash, which is why I argue for self-custody. So, that's all a possibility, and we just don't know how this is going to unfold. I mean, these fourth turnings tend to be kind of messy events, and I talk about that in the book. There's a chapter on volatility and so forth, and we all have to be prepared, for all outcomes. And which, by the way, is why, you don't want to ever have. I mean, I met with a gentleman last week, and he'd taken 100% position in one thing. He was extremely conservative, thought the stock market was overvalued. He was 100% in treasury bills, but it was killing him that all his friends had made a ton of money in the Mag 7. And I said to him, and that's why, even if you didn't believe in the Mag 7, you might have wanted to take a 10% position in it when, back when they did. And he said, well, what do I do now? And I said, you buy some Bitcoin, you take a 10% position in Bitcoin, 20% position. He said, yeah, but it's so high. And I said, you're doing the same thing. You're trying to time it. He said, what if it comes down? If there's a big financial crash, it's going to come down. I said, yeah, it might. And guess what? That would be a buying opportunity. Do you know what I mean? So you get started, and then you let volatility become your friend. I mean, Bill Miller became a very wealthy man by playing the volatility in Amazon. Amazon was a network business that was adopted, and it probably had 10 or 12 cases where it was down over 50 or 60%, very much like Bitcoin. And he just believed in the concept, and when it would go down, he would buy more of it. And that's another thing that's in the book that I think is very important to point out. The investment models got broken and changed when we got to networking businesses. It's in the back part of the book, but I actually kind of discovered this as I was writing the book, and I did the math, and I was like, oh my goodness, this is an insight. And the insight is this: prior to the internet and prior to networking businesses, very few companies went up in value by over 100 times over their lifespan. I mean, General Motors from 1916 to present is like 300x. Okay, that's a lot of money. That's a good return. So get these numbers from the early 2000s when Google went public, or when Facebook went public, or Amazon went public. These are all kind of network businesses, right? Google's up 218,000%. Amazon is up 9,000%. Facebook is up 2,000%. Okay. We'd never seen anything like this before in the investment world. I mean, I went to, I got an MBA. I learned about investing. I learned about, cash flow multiples. Networking businesses are different. Metcalfe's law says that the value of a network grows at the square or some exponent of its underlying user growth. Therefore, they are the best investment, and you have to break the model. And I miss these. Okay, so I was in the growth equity investment business in the 2000s. I was looking at these things and I'm going, gosh, Amazon's growing fast, not making any money, and the value is crazy. I can't pay for that. There's no price earnings multiple. Same thing with Google. Same thing with Facebook. I had that conclusion on all three of those stocks. Boy, did I screw up, right?
You're not going to
Basically,
miss on the Bitcoin
you
vote.
got it right. I said to myself, I'm not missing this time. I get it. I've seen this before. I've seen this movie. I know what's coming. I'm not
You're
screwing
a
up.
cowboy now.
I'm in this thing now, big time. So yeah, but I think it's an important insight. Lots of things over time, life doesn't change much, and lots of rules are tried and true. But occasionally the rules get changed. I mean, occasionally, and they tend to get changed with a big technological development. I mean, I was at a conference where I was speaking to an old gold guy, an old sound money guy. And I said to him, it was Jim Grant, who runs Grant Industry Observer. And I said to him, Jim, you really got to look at this Bitcoin thing, because by Menger's definition, it's money and blah, blah, blah. And it's going to be, and he looked at me and he said, Larry, come back to me when you've got 1,000 years of history, and then I'll consider it. And I said, Jim, slow down a second. You mean to tell me that when air flight got invented, you wanted to wait 1,000 years before you were ready to get on an airplane? I mean,
great answer.
Right? I mean, now, admittedly, in the beginning, air flight was really dangerous, and there were a lot of crashes in the 30s and 40s. But I mean, now we're going across when the Concorde was running, we go across the ocean in 3 hours. I mean, it's different. It's a technological change, right? And that was, I think a lot of people just don't see that, right?
Yeah, and the world's accelerating. Things are happening so fast. Technology is developed so quickly.
Yeah, add in AI, right? And it's just, and by the way, that's one of the things that can help us out of the difficulties of this reset. I mean, if we get enormously more productive, which AI promises and could do, that'll help. That'll make the transition easier. I hope it does.
Yeah. It could help. The only thing I always say to people is it's a tool. Don't forget that you need to use it and not the other way around.
Well, that's right. And it also, I will say this, because I lived through the dot-com bubble as an investor, watching it very carefully. And, pets.com came public and crashed and so forth. And the AI space right now has a real March of 2000 feel to it. It's pretty bubbly. A lot of money, a lot of hope, a lot of hype. Don't get me wrong. I know AI is going to change the world. I used ChatGPT on the book. I was blown away with what I was able to do, or what it was able to do for me. But, these new developments, you can get ahead of yourself. And I think AI has done that.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And never forget, it has no soul. It has no consciousness.
Oh, that's right.
It does not have the magic that humans have.
It's not a human being. That's right.
Exactly. Okay, so I want to ask you, do you see a geopolitical shift towards gold-backed or Bitcoin-backed currencies as countries like China and Russia seek alternative to the dollar?
I do. I mean, we've seen that. So let's go with China, or just with dollar-backed trade. So the petrodollar was birthed by Kissinger in the early 70s, and oil trade. Oil's the largest commodity, probably one of the most important commodity in the world, and 95% of oil trade was dollar-based. Pre the war in the Ukraine. That our seizing of the Russian assets was a watershed moment in the way people viewed the dollar, in my opinion. And what it's led to is a lot of alternative currencies getting used for major trade things like oil. And so I now heard statistics that suggest that oil is only 65% dollar denominated. So, the Saudis might be buying oil from the Chinese and paying getting paid in yuan, or selling oil to the Chinese, getting paid in yuan. And then in turn, if they don't have anything to buy from the Chinese, if they don't want something that China makes, they turn around and they go to the Shanghai Gold Exchange and they buy gold as a neutral reserve asset. In the past, they would have bought dollars and put them into treasury bills. So, and you see that because the volumes in the Shanghai Gold Exchange are going up very substantially. So yes, I do see a shift toward gold becoming a potential neutral reserve currency. I also think Bitcoin is slowly but surely becoming a neutral reserve currency. I mean, first country adopter was a troubled small country, El Salvador, but it's done great things for them. And we now know that the several countries in the Middle East, including the UAE, and Saudi Arabia are building Bitcoin reserves. And so yes, I think that, and I think the U.S. actually is aware of it. I mean, Jason Lowery wrote a book on this. He's a brilliant young man. He works in the Pentagon, and he basically said to us at a private meeting that he believes that the CIA and the military understand the importance of a neutral reserve currency, and they understand that Bitcoin is the better of the two versus gold. So yes, I think we're going to get there. But you do have to remember that we're still very, very early days. That there's a lot of skepticism, and it's nice to what I find interesting and nice to see is real fiat lords, and I'll say Larry Fink, in my view, who runs BlackRock, was a fiat lord, right? Have come and they've examined it carefully, and they realize that, gosh, this thing's going to work with me or without me.
Exactly.
I'm better off to get on board and create an ETF and take advantage of it. Whereas the guy, I can't remember his name now, but the guy who ran Vanguard was like, oh, this is all bullshit. It's a fraud. And he said, no, I'm not interested in that at all. And of course, he lost his job. So, Bitcoin kind of forces people to bend the knee. I mean, a real old school investor named Ray Dalio, who runs Bridgewater, a very successful hedge fund, has always been a gold guy because he understands the importance of sound money. And he kind of became a little bit of a Bitcoin guy a few years ago. And now he's talking a lot more and more about Bitcoin. And so what happens is it's like with all of us. I mean, in the early days, I honestly wasn't 100% behind it. I didn't fully understand it. I was always afraid it would technically fail. I mean, I remember the prior experiments, David Chaum, DigiCash, eGold. I mean, I remember all that stuff. And I was afraid, that's just another one. It's not going to work, But here we are, 16 years, 800 and some odd thousand blocks, and, TikTok, it just keeps working. So
exactly. Yeah, it's stronger. And they cannot stop it. So they join. I'm with you on that page. What I'm seeing when I'm doing all my research about CBDCs and the whole digital monetary order that is going to be put in place, I see that the landscape is very diverse. There are different types of digital monetary assets that they're playing around with to try out. Some of them are CBDCs, but some of them are stable coins and tokenization of deposits and assets and things like that. But in the end of the day, they want to bring most financial assets to the blockchain, whatever type of privatized, permissioned blockchain they will work on. And they also experiment a lot with Bitcoin, which is obviously a good thing for us. But at the same time, the push will be towards a permissioned, identified, KYC type of Bitcoin, and maybe through ETFs. Like that will be the mainstream. And I think most people that will go onto Bitcoin will go onto an ETF or a KYC type of platform. Yeah. So I think that when you have such a diversity of options, and it's like this, I call it the buffet, the smorgasbord of digital monetary assets right now, people could choose like what type of asset they want to play with, and countries will choose what they want to implement. Some of them will implement CBDCs, others will implement other types of technologies. But in the end of the day, it will all be digital, it will all be global, permissioned, and identified. The key is to be identified. I think in that kind of world, the thing that we can contribute to people is firstly understanding the difference between KYC Bitcoin to non-KYC Bitcoin, and understanding the importance of self-custody versus ETFs or any other type of instrument. And, we don't know, but maybe one day non-KYC will be considered like banned, or you're not allowed to promote it or talk about it or even have it, just like gold at one point was confiscated, right?
Yes.
So I just, you make me think with all your history and what we said about how things are changing so quickly. I think that I agree with you. By the end of this decade, we may see a totally different landscape, a monetary landscape with different rules of the game. And I just really recommend to people to start learning about money. This is the time to start educating yourself about what this is all about, because before you know it, 1 or 2 years from now, you're going to start being bombarded by the government or the state or banks with all these offers for new products that you don't know anything about, and you
That's
don't
right.
have any discernment because you haven't learned anything.
I think that's right. I think it's a terribly important message. There will be people who will try and co-opt Bitcoin. I mean, they can't, but there will be people who will, there'll be probably people who will sell paper Bitcoin too. I mean,
Yeah.
there are lots of different things that, I mean, when there's a lot of money involved, bad actors will figure out a way to get involved. And governments, we know what governments generally speaking want to do, which is perpetuate themselves and their power. So,
right. You saw now Ethereum with North Korea. It's
yeah, right.
they're trying stuff out. You see Milei launching his
Oh, I know.
coin, right? Like
What
they're
the heck is he
going to try
thinking?
everything and
Yeah,
anything.
yeah. I mean, well, and I mean, look, I'm supportive of this administration versus the alternative, but Trump coin, I mean, Melania coin, come on, I just those of us who've been in the space a while, we just know that those were bad ideas, and that's not the spirit of fairness and equality and equity that we're trying to promote with Bitcoin. I mean,
Yeah.
basically, non-Bitcoin cryptocurrencies. I'm with Max on this. They're all shit coins.
Yeah.
I mean, I will accept that there might be a layer 2 coin that'll emerge and be necessary if only the Lightning Network doesn't develop quickly enough. I mean, I have to say, having watched this space for a bunch of years now and watched Lightning, I mean, it's great. Lightning's making progress, but I wish it were making more progress faster. And because the means of exchange, medium of exchange use of Bitcoin is still really quite trivial. Do you know what I mean? And sure, we can go to a Bitcoin conference and use our Lightning wallets to pay for a sandwich. And sure, there are countries where you can go and you can use it, but in general, it's pretty hard to use Bitcoin in a Lightning transaction, find somebody who'll accept it. So, but that'll change. I mean,
Of course.
it reminds me of the internet. The internet was clunky and hard to use in the early days too. And of course, now it's ubiquitous and simple to use. So the same kinds of things will happen here.
I agree with you. So, Larry, on that note, what is a message you want to leave the audience with? A message of hope, or how do you see things unfolding?
So just my general message would be, look, we are going through a big monetary transition. Don't ignore it. Lean into it. You got to understand it. Obviously, I'm trying to sell my book, and I know probably people think I'm just trying to make money off the book, but as an author, I can tell you don't make much money selling books. There's a lot of printing costs.
It's a mission. It's so much more than that.
It's not about the money. It's about, and then more importantly.
No, but really stop for a second, because you are an investor and you have a business and you do so much and you know how to make money. So you make money. The book, if people know marketing or they know business, books is not how you make money.
No, you can't make money on books.
It's not a way to get rich.
But what you can do, and this is why actually, when I first started writing the book, somebody reached out to me on Twitter, said, "Hey, you got some really great content. You ever thought of writing a book?" And I called her up and I started talking to her. We talked for a while, and as it turns out, we didn't end up doing anything. But she said something to me that really stuck in my head. She said, "Larry, books can change the world." And I got that idea in my head. I was like, "Oh man, change the world! Oh, that's kind of cool," And so
that's why your voice and your messages are so important.
Look, it's somewhat immodest to think that I have something so important to say that it can change the world. But if you don't throw it out there and try, who knows? You don't, no effort, no risk, no reward. So my fondest hope is that this message resonates with people. People buy the book and then they think to themselves, gosh, I got to give this to my friends. We got to spread this word, and we've got to get a huge groundswell movement to make the world a better place. The book is all about how to make the world a better place, to end war, to end divisiveness, to end financial apartheid, to end, the advantage that the rich have over the poor, all of that. I mean, all of society's problems can be solved, in my opinion, by returning to a form of sound money. And Bitcoin is the best one we've ever had by far. And so, I would just please take the time to study this. And then if you need a tool to help you, I think I've written a really good tool. I mean, I think this is a very sharp sword that can chop through all the horse shit that the mainstream have told us. And if we all wake up and we pursue this mission, we've got the other side is outnumbered. I mean, number of people in government and the number of people in banking and finance and the Federal Reserve, the fiat system, it's not a big number of people. What they've done is they've had propaganda to snow us all into believing that we have to live the way they say we have to live. And what the book does is it says bullshit. No, you're screwing us. We know you're screwing us. We're pissed off about it, and we're not going to do that. We're not going to live that way. We're going to live a better way. That's the message of the book. So, yeah, right. I just hope we can move a lot of books and put a lot of books. I mean, look, if somebody can't afford it, DM me when I get my Twitter back, DM me or email me, and I'll send it to you for free. I mean, that's. It's not about making the money. It's about spreading the word here. That's really the goal.
Awesome. We're going to do everything we can to push that message forward. This is incredible. The fact that you have written a book is fantastic. And
thank you, Efra. You're very kind. And I like I said, I hope people like it. I put all my warts in there. It's good and bad. But again, I did that basically because, people read stories. People watch reality TV. They want stories. So I got a lot of stories.
It's great. And by the way, soon we're going to get an audio version of it as well.
Yes, Walker America is recording it right now. It'll be out soon. I've had a lot of requests for that. Sorry for the delay. I'm sorry I can't read it myself. I just got too many things to do. And
no, but Walker is a great choice. He's got a beautiful voice.
He's got a much better voice than I do. So look, it's all going to be great. And I would just say, if you can, buy the book and give it to your friends. Recommend it to your friends. That's the goal, right? Yeah.
Fantastic. Okay. And Larry, I'm going to see you in Vegas soon.
Yeah, I'll be in Vegas. I'll just tell my people my schedule if anyone wants a signed book. Eventually, I'll have a website up. It's in development, and you can buy a signed book there. But just for the cost of the book, I don't charge for the signature. But my schedule this year, if anyone wants to, I'm going to the Bit Block Boom in Dallas. It's coming up. You can Google that. I'm going to Cheat Code in Bedford, England, sometime in the spring. I think it's April sometime. I'm going to Vegas, and then I will be at Prague.
Awesome, in
Prague.
June.
So in June, yeah.
June.
And then maybe some other things after that, but those are all a definite. I will attend all of those, and anyone should just come up, introduce yourself, say hello. I'll sign books, whatever. I'm happy to. I'm open to all conversations about anything, any questions about the book, any topics about this. I'm just trying to spread the word,
Fantastic. Wonderful. And we're going to put a link in the show notes to your Twitter, which is going to be reinstated by the time this interview goes out. No, you have my word. This is going to happen. We're going to make it happen.
Don't put the link there until I get it back. If anyone listens to this knows Elon, if you're Ashley St. Clair and you're listening to this, reach out.
Yeah, don't worry. We're gonna help, and also your Nostr NPub is going to be there.
I'm big on it. Nostr has become a new go-to for me, and I will over time. Twitter will be less, and Nostr will be more. So
wonderful.
Love Nostr.
Good, Larry. Thank you so much for your time.
Yeah, nice to see you.
I love speaking to you.
Yeah, thanks.
I'll see you soon.
See ya. Bye.
Bye-bye. Thanks for being with us. Please take a minute to give this episode a like, a comment, and subscribe or follow. And please share it with your friends so they can also get value and choose to take some positive action in their lives. Till next time.